Much like the fight game, the NFL is a sport where any team can win on any given Sunday, and that's why it's one of my favorite sports to bet on. And right now, if you're a new DraftKings customer, you can go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, bet $5, get $150 of bonus bets instantly just by using promo code INSIDEFIGHTING. And if sports betting is not yet available in your state, it's not a big deal because you can always just go to DraftKings Daily Fantasy Sports and get in on the action there. So if you guys want to bet on some NFL games, new customers, go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, bet $5, get $150 of bonus bets instantly. You just got to use promo code INSIDEFIGHTING.
Let me tell you something about Andrew. This is my boy right here. You disrespect him, you're disrespecting me.
Inside Fighting. Shout out to Inside Fighting.
We are back. It is the Fight Season Podcast. It's me, Jesse Rowe with Inside Fighting, joined by Inside Fighting CEO and founder, Robby Clark. What's up, man? Robby, how are you? We're coming off of the UFC 296 press conference. I don't know where to begin with what we just saw, but let's just start with how you're doing and what were your initial feelings coming out of that press conference?
I'm doing great, man. I don't watch all the press conferences because sometimes they're a little mundane. But I wanted to see what Colby was going to come up with. It's funny because, his corny scripted stuff gets better and better every time. And even though he fumbles over his lines sometimes, it's entertaining. We know it's entertainment. We know Colby really is actually a very nice person. In person, he's a really nice guy. But when he puts on this WWE scripted comedy and goes a little over the edge sometimes, it's really funny. So I thought it was a really entertaining press conference. Even with Tony Ferguson and Paddy going back and forth a little bit, it was some funny stuff.
No, there was there's a lot of stuff to cover. So I guess we'll just start with probably what everybody is talking about right now, which is Colby Covington going after Leon Edwards. This is the thing I really want to get into just because you mentioned the WWE thing, and obviously, there's a line that's crossed with the proper amount of trash talk before a fight in order to sell a pay-per-view. And is it okay to go after somebody's wife? Is it okay to go after somebody's deceased father? Well, Colby Covington seems to think that he can cross that line because he did both things in this press conference, starting with going after Ian Garry's wife, surveying the crowd. If any of them, we don't have to really get into that because it's obviously Ian Garry was not there to defend himself, but surveyed the crowd about his wife. And just, do you think is this appropriate for fight game trash talk? Because I know Nate Diaz has said this before, where it's like when you start getting into people's family lives, that's no longer selling a fight. That goes past the fight game. Do you agree with that, or do you think that this is kosher for selling a pay-per-view?
Yeah, listen, I'm not going to disagree with Nate.
Yeah.
But, it's different when you have, Nate in particular, he's got a private life and he's very smart about, what he puts out there, what he doesn't, right? If you're going to put everything out there like Ian Garry does, or his wife wrote a book on how to finesse,
how to be a wag. It was a
how to be a wag, right? Which is
an audiobook. Yeah. From 15 years ago or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't matter when it was, right? But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if the stories are true, if the business is true, I don't know if you've seen that Toronto slang. I'm only speaking to Toronto people right now. If the business is true,
okay,
that you let the mom in the hoods, okay.
No, I'm not. No,
it's
over my head.
It's a viral thing in Toronto.
Yeah.
But the reality is that she put herself out there. So if you're going to put yourself out there like that, and if the story is true that he actually lives with her and her ex-husband, which is his nutritionist.
Yeah.
And, she's significantly older. I think 40 years old. He's 26 or something like that, right?
26, she's 40, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, nothing wrong with that, but she put herself out there. So if you're going to put yourself out there like that, then you got to be able to listen. If you don't want the smoke, then you have a private profile. Don't put stuff out there, and it doesn't matter what it was. So listen, we saw that with Dylan Danis and Logan Paul, and we could definitely say that Dylan might have crossed the line a bit, but at the same time, his Logan's fiance is a public figure, right?
Right.
And when you choose to be a public figure, you're making that choice, right? I know when I put stuff out there, I could have people come on my Instagram or say whatever, right? And that's a decision. So I think, you know, you're opening yourself up to that as soon as you make yourself a public figure. And if you're going to write a book on how to be a wag, which is you know, for North American terminology, how to date a male athlete, and you do exactly that, then absolutely you're going to open yourself up to criticism. So I really didn't have much trouble with that.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people here have, you know,
Slept with his wife. Yeah.
yeah, banged his wife? Like, I mean, hopefully none of them, right? But
Yeah.
like it's you know, he's doing what he does. I really didn't have much issue with that. I thought it was like, hey, that's funny. He's playing to it. It was a weird comment because I'm like, wow, there's just some probably better scripted jokes he could have done, but I thought it was I didn't see anything wrong with that. She's a public figure. She wrote that book. That's what you get.
So that follows up. I tend to agree with that. But this does follow up with the next thing that I think is what probably is going to garner the most headlines, with Leon Edwards throwing a microphone at Colby Covington because Colby decides to make a joke about taking Leon into the 7th layer of hell, just like, you know, we can go say what's up to your dad when we're there.
Literally, you're so fucking stupid. On Saturday night, I'm going to bring you to a place you never want to be. I'm going to bring you to the 7th layer hell.
Okay.
No, I'm bringing you to 7th layer hell. We'll say what's up to your dad while we're there.
Oh.
And Colby and Leon's dad is obviously passed on. And I don't know what your reaction was. I had a visceral like, whoa, that was I don't know if that was okay or not. I wasn't sure. And based on Leon's reaction, I think Leon looked really shook and rattled by it, and I hope it doesn't translate into the fight. That's my concern. Is like, I don't know if Leon's ever faced this type of trash talk before, because he's obviously had great rivalry with Kamaru Usman. But this was like, you could tell this was he went silent for a good 10 minutes, and you could tell this was different. How did you feel? Did you feel like that joke was out of pocket for selling a pay-per-view like this?
Yeah, so that's something you know, different. Now, 2 questions I have. You might not you know this, or maybe you do. Did Leon was he ever charged with anything? Did he do something that's like, oh, he doesn't? Was he, you know, you have no disrespect, but Michael Venom Page, right? And his dad has had some controversy with you know, underage.
So
I'm not sure if it hit on a chord. And listen, I'm a big Michael Venom Page fan. This is nothing to do with him himself, but right, like there could be criticism there. I'm sure if he were to have to fight Kobe, that's going to come up. Was his dad like known for doing anything, or no? It was just not a part.
I see right here from a Daily Mail article, it's the first thing that pops up, that Edwards' father was shot and killed in a London nightclub when the MMA star was just 13 years old, and Rocky believes that it was the motive of the murderer was a dispute over money. So that's the that's just me reading the headline. I haven't read any more into it.
Yeah, you know what? That could be. Listen, this is a tough fight. Any way you want to slice it. I'm like, I've tried to go back and forth on this, and I'm like, you know, Kobe's got a gas tank for ages, but he's a smaller welterweight. Leon's bigger than he actually looks because of his frame. He's actually a decent sized welterweight. He's a big guy.
Yeah.
And that could just be Kobe trying to get into his head because he wants to make him angry in the fight and get him tired out, because that's really what he's got to do. He's got to grind him out. Leon showed great takedown defense against Usman in their last fight. So out of pocket, yeah, we could definitely say that. I mean, this is a fight game. That's the only thing where it's like, look, this isn't, we're not playing patty cakes here, you know, like we're literally going to try to end you until the ref pulls us off. So it's very tough. There's some things that are definitely, you could definitely argue both ways. That's the problem with the fight game. You can argue it both ways. Because you know, I would never personally attack something like that, but he's like, listen, man, this guy's coming to kill me, headshot dead. And what can I do to get under his skin to tire him out? So yeah, I thought it was a little weird. I didn't even know. I was like, oh, I guess he must have died. And I thought he threw a bottle of water, not a microphone. That's aggressive. That's like what Dylan did. That was, you know.
So I wrote the post. I was seeing what bottle of water like instantly. So that was my instant reaction. So it was a microphone?
Wow. No, I thought you said microphone.
No, I thought it was a bottle of
Okay,
water.
water.
I wasn't exactly sure. It was like I was posting it
Shouldn't
so
have been that
quickly.
mad then. No.
It was so quick that I was like, oh, gotta get
Yeah.
this post up. It was so fast, and I was seeing people say water bottle, but yeah, I mean, I just I just can't imagine that that's where I don't you just try to put yourself in the headspace of these guys. You're kind of do two different things. It's the Conor McGregor thing. How do you sell a fight, and how do you get under your opponent's skin at the exact same time, right? And
Yeah.
Colby, I wonder sometimes if his trash talk game is just good enough where he's able to get under their skin, but it's also just bad enough. He's not eloquent enough to do it without really taking those low blows. And that's what that's where I walk a fine line with Colby, because I don't really like the guy. I wouldn't call myself somebody. I would never want to hang out with a Colby Covington, but I also don't think that what he's doing
Well,
is
I bet you would. Like,
he might be a really nice guy for all I know.
Behind closed doors, probably
Yeah.
one of the nicest people. But
Right.
on stage, he's got to play. You got to remember, if we take back for people who don't know the history of Colby Covington, he was going to get cut
Yeah.
before he fought Damian Maia in the UFC. And the UFC is like, yeah, listen, nobody really wants to watch you. And you see this with there's a lot of fighters, not a lot. Like Conor is obviously, he's an exceptional person because he was very exciting to watch. And his press conferences were amazing. Colby, growing up with his wrestling base, not like his fights are exciting now because he fights the best, but he wasn't necessarily the most exciting fighter. And a lot of the build-up on fights has to do with before the fight. It's not the actual fight. A lot of times fights are just very
Short.
unimpressive. Yeah, and they're short. Exactly.
Yeah.
Where all the views in content and everything coming from, it's a build-up to the fight. So I think Colby understood that after the Damian, he called, you're all garbage or trash, whatever he said in Brazil, right? And so he took that to another level. But you kind of have to, if you're, some people do it just on their fighting merits, some people do it on their speaking, and some people do it on both. And if you're able to do it on both, you're going to be, and even Colby. Colby is probably an example of, it's more important to do it outside the ring than it is even inside the ring.
That's what I wanted to get to.
Credentials.
I think that Colby and Chael Sonnen have a lot in common because both of them are wrestling heavy fighters. And
that's what I was looking for. Chael's a more boring fighter than Colby, because Colby will go out there and strike. Chael's like, if I can't take you down, and respecting Chael, he never really got hurt. Like he got knocked out, I think, once near the end of his career, but like
Fedor knocked him out. Yeah.
Vitor.
Yeah.
Took a shot against Bisping, but he never really took that much damage, but he was so entertaining. And you would watch the fight, and it makes the fight more entertaining. Even if it's like, oh, you're just wrestling or lying on you, you're cheering for that takedown because that's his game, because you're emotionally invested.
Well, look at a guy like Jailton Almeida, who people say he's a really boring fighter. I mean, there's not much of a difference between a guy like Chael and Jailton in terms of the way they fight. But because Chael, he's able to sell a fight by his trash talk. He really upset his opponents. I mean, we saw what he did to Vanderlei Silva, how upset he got him. And I think that's what Colby also understands about not just, staying in the UFC and being relevant, but also his fighting style in particular. You have to, make yourself more palatable. And part of that is outside of the octagon as much as inside. There's actually a great Colby video where he's talking to a fan where the fan, Colby's signing, he's giving the kid advice. He's really sweet. He's warm-hearted. And the kid goes, you should show this side of yourself more often. I really like this side of you. You should show it more. He's like, I appreciate that, man. That's not what sells. He says it right there while he's being filmed. So that tells you everything that you need to know. Really quick, what was your...
Colby's just a big sweetheart,
Yeah, he is.
Trump-loving sweetheart.
What did you enjoy... Well, he did a lot of things that we could talk about. We're not going to have all the time. I mean, he called basically Stephen Wonderboy Thompson a pedophile because he's the teacher, which was so funny. And kudos to the way that Wonderboy, because he literally, this is his persona, killed him with kindness. He just reacted. He did not play into it. He was a sweetheart about it. Poor Shavkat Rakhmonov really just stood no chance at this press conference to say anything, but that's to be expected. Colby and Tony had one of the best.
Every time every time I hear him, I think of Borat. From Kazakhstan,
Right.
And there's an example of a guy who's incredibly exciting. Sorry, I'll let you get to your question, but incredibly exciting, but he can't speak English. He's like, they asked him a question. They tried to ask him a question. He's like, I do MMA in whatever Kazakhstan language is. No disrespect to Borat or the Kazakhstanis, but yeah.
he's a true, his fighting style will sell the fight because he's not gonna be a guy on the mic. But one of my favorite personal moment of the press conference was Tony Ferguson and Paddy Pimblett. That was great. But Tony Ferguson and Colby, their little interaction where it started off with them hating on each other. Colby calls Tony Benedict Arnold. And then it becomes who's more patriotic. They basically had this whole back and forth about who's more patriotic. Really quick, just your take on Tony, the lead up to this fight, and what do you expect? This is not the betting show, but what do you expect from Tony coming up this weekend? I think Tony he's shown a different side of himself since the Nate Diaz fight. He seems more focused. He seems ready to go. How are you feeling about Tony going into this weekend?
Yeah, real quick, I wanted to touch on that. So it's funny thing, the comment you said earlier about you know, people liking Kobe now. There's a real crazy thing about, you know, human psychology. It's like, you know, generally the people you can love people and then you grow to hate them and then you respect them again, or it goes the other way around. You hate them and then you love them and then you hate them again and then you respect them. There's a cycle, right? When Conor was growing up, people loved him because he was so charismatic. Then they hated him. But then there's that little turnaround. And Kobe, when he started getting out there, he was hated. And now he's starting to become loved. So he's in that cycle. Very, very interesting, right?
That is true.
There's always cycles to everything, and eventually you become endearing. So I thought that interaction between Tony and Kobe was really cool because you saw the good side of Kobe, which a lot of people just take him for, like 95% of people, like I'll get that all the time. Like, actually, you know what's funny is everybody loves Nate Diaz, which is great, right? And Nate Diaz is a man. Nate Diaz is the realest human being you will ever meet. But then you get a guy like Jake Paul who can say some things and on the other side of it, and people like hate him, and will pick on one line, or Andrew Tate, right? Like guys like that, and they'll pick on one line and say, I hate this guy, but they don't really know them. And if they take the time to actually understand them, they like him a little bit more in Tate's situation. And you know, Colby is one of those ones where it's like when he lets his guard down, you see he's like, this guy's actually not a bad dude. He's just trying to build his career. But in terms of the you were asking the Paddy and Tony fight, right? What I think of that?
Yeah, no, just the interaction, just really quick, where we see Tony this weekend, just because I don't know. I guess I'm more so interested in the interaction that he had with Paddy because you know, that was I was kind of unexpected because him and Bobby Green didn't really go after each other like that. Seems like he really doesn't like Paddy, or you think he's just selling it? I don't know. I didn't know what to make of it. I was sort of a little back.
Tony's a firecracker. I don't think he's doing anything to purposely. He's just like listen, I want Tony to win.
Yeah.
Now, the reason for that is because you always want to see the OGs do well. Paddy's funny. Paddy's charismatic. He's this and that, but he said some things like in the past where he's like, well, I'm not going to fight these guys unless I'm getting top money. I haven't been proven yet that Paddy actually wants to be a champion, right? Yeah. And I need to see that from him. If he beats Tony and then goes out there and beats somebody else and he's like, I want to be the champion, that's different. But who has he really, you know, been impressive against? He's like Gordon. Who is he like? Gordon something.
Oh, Jared Gordon. Yeah.
Jared Gordon, who actually I felt won that fight. I felt Jared won that
Everybody
fight.
kind of thought Jared Gordon won that fight. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he's got incredible potential, but it's like, you know, you got to come out and be like, I'm the best. Like Ian Garry, right? Like we talk about his way. Ian Garry's like, I want to be the best. And he's
your point really quick, not to interrupt you, about people who the psychology analogy that you were making about how there's the waves. Ian Garry's the same one. I spoke to Tim Elliott. He said the same thing. Ian Garry, people hate you now, or they're making fun of you now. If you go and knock people out, it's a shame he didn't get a chance to fight this weekend, because I think if he knocks Vicente Luque out, or whoever he fights next, he might fight Luque at 297 maybe. They might just reschedule that fight, but that's the way that he's going to do it. And I could see Ian Garry a total redemption arc coming, and I think that's like, you know, I think that's to your point. So
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And listen, I think Ian Garry beats Vicente. I think Ian Garry, like that's a good style matchup. I think because Vicente likes to kind of use his range too, but he's not a tall guy. I think that's a bad matchup for Vicente, and I think that's why they were doing it too. But Vicente is going to fight whoever, you know, he's a gangster, so he can beat whoever. But no, that's a bad matchup for Vicente, in my opinion. Ian Garry, if he can use his range, listen, he's a great fighter. But that's what I'm saying. It's like Paddy, in my opinion, is actually more personable than Ian Garry in ways. Ian Gary's kind of charismatic, but it's like you're always comparing him to Connor with that, the Irish side.
Yeah.
But Paddy's a Scouser, right? And he's got it, but he's not come out there and claimed the throne. And that's the he's like, if they're gonna pay me this, I'd rather fight bums. And there are no bums in the UFC. We know that. So I want to see Tony win because, man, what a story. And nobody's kept. Who's lost 6 fights in a row and maintains a UFC?
It can only be a big star like Tony. It can really only be somebody who can.
Tony's and he's a pretty big star. I mean, he's not like Nate Diaz. Yeah, the 2 biggest stars in the UFC are Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz in terms of pay-per-view sales when they were there. Those are 1 and 2. And Tony's a pretty big star, but it's interesting. I was a little bit surprised that they're not, if he had said hang it up, Dana wouldn't have had an issue. But if he wants to come back, he's like, hey, but I want him to win this one because I think it'd be fun. And right now, if I'm honest, I think Paddy the Baddy be fun to go out with. He'd be fun to go eat with. I don't see him being like, I'm going to be a champion. And any champion throughout UFC history, and we're talking back to 1999, was like, I'm going to be champion. And if they didn't say that, their head's not in the right place, and maybe he gets there. But I haven't felt that or heard that from him. So I'd rather see Tony go out there and pull this upset, because it would be an upset. And he's not going to retire. He'll probably be like, oh, I can beat anybody and go back out there. But listen, if Paddy wins, which he should, let's see him call some shots. Maybe he's now remote. He's got a kid on the way. Maybe he's like, I want to fight this guy. I want to fight this guy. I'm getting after it. And we see a different approach to his game.
Yeah, either way, that's actually my favorite fight on the card. So I'm excited about that. But Robby, I know it's late. I know that we're past midnight there in Toronto. Thank you for joining me. The last thing I want to say is I hope with the Leon Edwards, Colby Covington thing that, because I'm a big fan of Leon. I hope that he comes into the fight tomorrow night level-headed, because it didn't look very level-headed to me. Give you the last word before we wrap this up. Who you got tomorrow night?
Yeah, I can go all night, by the way, Jesse. So
I know you can. I can feel it.
But I think Leon's got a great team around him, and they're going to calm him down. That's the first thing they're going to say, like, hey, listen, you need to, and that's probably why he was trying to, recenter himself, but they're going to get him calmed down in there. And he needs to, because if he comes out there guns blazing, it's going to be a long night. I think he's going to want to catch Colby and knock him out, obviously, but he's got to do his thing, and he's pretty composed. We haven't really, bring it up again, we haven't really seen him hurt since since Nate Diaz. So what was that, 2019, 2020, when he caught him at the end of the fight? Right. He's very composed in all of his fights. And he was very composed in the Nate fight, and he slipped up in the 5th round and almost got finished. That's the closest he's been to being finished. Usman just out wrestled him in their first fight. The next fight, he really you haven't seen him hurt. So he's typically composed, got a very, very good team around him. They're very old school MMA, that's what. So I think his head's going to be in the right place, and I think that it's going to be a hell of a fight. I kind of want Colby to win just because the entertainment side of it, And I think if Stephen wins, if he can pull that off, I think he's like a 5-1 underdog. But I think that would be. I would love to see Stephen fight one more time. At 40 years old, it's always good to see an older guy go in there and fight for the belt. Stephen looks like he did, 15 years ago, at least,
Yeah. He's baby faced.
Yeah. So, that'd be a funny one. It'd be some fun fights out there. But, Leon, I struggle with this one. I think Leon should pull it off, but I think there'd be a lot more hype around future fights if Colby wins.
Yep, and we're going to complete that meme of Strickland, O'Malley, and Colby Covington being champions. I'm going to have that graphic ready for Inside Fighting's Instagram account in case it does happen. So I'll have it ready to go.
Let me tell you something about Andrew. This is my boy right here. You disrespect him, you're disrespecting me.
Inside Fighting, shout out to Inside Fighting.